As you know, this Tuesday, we just had another horrible, tragic mass murder at an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas. My heart is broken for the innocent children who were killed and for their families. The last thing on my mind would be to make a video about it. I can't stand it when people take advantage of a tragedy to promote themselves or their agenda. So this video has no ads, no sponsors, no intro music, just these written notes to try to keep me from going off the deep end. Because I'm mad. No, I am furious. This senseless tragedy should not have happened. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me share a few specifics based on the latest reporting about that event, tell you why I think this horrible event could have been prevented, and then I'll share the final straw that made me decide to make this video, and I'll try to stay calm. First, the latest reports indicate that the obviously disturbed, pathetic, cowardly loser walked into the school unchallenged through an unlocked door into a classroom and started killing innocent, defenseless children and their teacher. Then when the police arrived, there was allegedly a time period of between 40 minutes to an hour before law enforcement finally got into the classroom the murderous coward had chosen for his evil actions. It is hard to get a precise account of what happened, but apparently a Border Patrol agent or agents finally stormed the room and killed the cowardly murderer of children. And I saw one report that the hero agent was shot on the head by the coward, the bullet literally passing through his hat. So as I said, I think this entire tragedy could have been prevented, and I shared how back in 2018 in a video that a whole lot of people obviously didn't watch past the first 2 minutes because they called me everything but a child of God and unsubscribed by the truckload. But there are a few simple things that could have prevented this and other similar tragedies. Number one, lock the doors. I lock mine at home, you should too. Why would we allow this murderous coward just to walk in unchallenged among our precious children? Number two, completely eliminate this totally ridiculous gun-free zone stupidity. Obviously, like every other gun law, it does not stop anyone intent on criminal actions. What it does do is create a perceived safe space for cowards who want to hurt or kill innocent people. That's just plain common sense. Number three, good guys with guns. Just like every other similar situation, this one was ended by a good guy with a gun. In almost every instance, a good guy with a gun either shoots the cowardly loser or the cowardly loser kills himself. It's almost always a male. So the last two are different sides of the same coin. Gun-free zones make it illegal for most non-official people to have a firearm in their possession within the gun-free zone. This prevents someone with a concealed carry permit who's passed the same background check most law enforcement officers go through and often has to complete a course of training from having the tool to protect innocent lives from a coward with a gun. These gun-free zones prevent a teacher who wants to be prepared to defend his or her students from being able to adequately do so. The other side of that coin is armed police or highly trained security guards at every school, especially elementary and middle schools. I know there are a lot of people who say that would just frighten our kids and we want them to feel safe. I say it's more important that they are safe. I think it's obvious that these three things, controlled access, the ability for teachers and administrators who choose to do so and are willing to be trained to carry firearms, and the presence of official armed security would virtually eliminate the ability of these pathetic, cowardly losers to murder our precious children in their schools. Now, here's the last straw that made me decide to make this video instead of the fun one that I had planned. As I said at the beginning, I can't stand it when people shamelessly take advantage of a tragedy like this to promote themselves or an agenda. But I expected the usual calls for more gun control from those who would be our masters, and I can understand those who react emotionally to the horror and truly believe, even if it's unrealistic and naive, that if we could just pass some stronger gun control laws, these kind of tragedies wouldn't happen. I wasn't even shocked at the attention-grabbing antics of people like Beta O'Rourke, his parents named him appropriately, didn't they? Or even the bottom-dweller lawyers who are already urging the devastated families to sue gun manufacturers. But then today, I read an article about Senator Chuck Schumer bragging on Twitter about blocking the passage of a bill to create a federal clearinghouse on school safety best practices. Now, I'm not usually in favor of more legislation. I think we have more than enough laws already. But I read this bill. It's only about a page, surprisingly. It basically just proposes creating a way to figure out the best way to keep our schools safe. You can read it for yourself. Just Google USS.211. So here's the gist of the situation. I'll tell you why it makes me so mad. Republican Senator Ron Johnson asked for S211, the Luke and Alex School Safety Act of 2021, to be passed by unanimous consent. Chuck Schumer blocked it and tweeted, GOP Senator Johnson just tried for a bill that could see more guns in schools. I blocked it. The truth, there were officers at the school in Texas. The shooter got past him. We need real solutions. We will vote on gun legislation starting with the Domestic Terrorism Prevention Act. Okay, so first, he said it would cause it to see more guns in schools. There's nothing in the bill I read about guns, or police, or anything else. Nothing. It's zero. Second, as I said, the most recent report I read quoted a Texas Department of Safety official saying there was no resource officer at the door and the murderous coward just walked into the classroom. Third, he has to bring up gun legislation. Again, nothing about guns in the bill, and the Domestic Terror Prevention Act, which has nothing to do with school safety, but was defeated by Republicans. So it sounds like he's putting politics over our children's safety. Surely not. Just to be clear, here's a little info about the bill. Luke and Alex School Safety Act of 2021. And it says to establish the federal clearinghouse on school safety best practices and for other purposes. One of the purposes, it says, is the clearinghouse should be the primary resource of the federal government to identify and publish online through schoolsafety.gov or any successor website the best practices and recommendations for school safety for use by state and local educational agencies, institutions of higher education, state and local law enforcement agencies, health professionals, and the general public. So it's basically about putting together information on what the best practices are, right? Number 2 says the criteria for best practices and recommendations. The best practices and recommendations of the clearinghouse shall, at a minimum, and then the B under that says, include any evidence or research rationale supporting the determination of the clearinghouse. So the only thing I can figure that could have concerned Senator Schumer is the requirement for recommendations to be supported by evidence or research rationale. I can only assume that he knows that both of those would support what I said earlier, good guys with guns. So here's the straw that broke the camel's back for me and why I'm making this video. Senator Schumer, who, by the way, is our employee, works, if you can use that word, at the Capitol building in the U.S. Capitol. And at the U.S. Capitol, you can't just stroll in the front door with a rifle. In fact, you can't even walk in with a water bottle. In fact, here's what their website says. Before entering the Capitol Visitor Center, all visitors are screened by a magnetometer, and all items that are permitted inside the building are screened by an X-ray device. Oh, what about armed security for our children's schools? Wouldn't that be too expensive? Well, today, the United States Capitol Police, its function is to protect the Congress, its members, employees, visitors, and facilities so that it can fully fulfill its constitutional and legislative responsibilities in a safe, secure, and open environment. So the U.S. Capitol Police is strictly to protect Congress. Today, the USCP is composed of more than 2,300 officers and civilian employees and has an annual budget of $460 million. So can you believe the hypocrisy of these stinking vultures who choose to use a horrible tragedy like this to further their agenda of increasing their power and control while resisting any efforts to really do something constructive to make our children safer? Instead, they repeat the same old worn-out mantra that we need more gun control and that taking away your and my freedoms will somehow solve the problems they created or at least made worse with their gun-free zones. It sickens me and infuriates me. So what can you or I do? Well, first, next election, vote. Vote for candidates who support our right to be able to defend ourselves and our children with the same tools used to defend the Capitol. And just to be clear, sad but true, those candidates are almost never Democrats. If that bothers you, just check the voting records in Congress. Second, personally contact your elected representative and tell them what you want them to do. There's a link in the upper right-hand corner on how to do that. Third, support congressional term limits and make these bozos get a real job. Go to termlimits.com to find out more about that. And finally, and this maybe should have been first, it should have been first, pray for the families who have lost their children. I cannot imagine their suffering right now. I cannot imagine it. And it infuriates me that it is unnecessary, but pray for them. This is Brian from Survival on Purpose. Remember, survival is not an accident, so be prepared.